The Loud House is one of the longest-running animated series on Nickelodeon. During its run, it has produced a vast variety of media content. 9 seasons worth of episodes, some feature-length films, a 3-season spin-off including its own movie serving as a finale, and even a live-action adaptation. But we don't talk about that stuff. Of course, I certainly can't forget the many shorts that have been made over the years, and that's going to be the subject of this video. Today, I will be looking at all 21 shorts from The Loud House, and I will be ranking all of them. Truth be told, this is one Loud House video I had always contemplated on making, but always ended up putting it off. Over the years, I debated on whether I should actually review the shorts or make a top 10 list of the ones I consider the best. Plus, I always wanted to make a ranking video at some point, but could never decide on a topic besides the typical best or worst episodes of any given season. However, after much consideration and numerous requests from the viewers, I decided the time had come for me to finally make some kind of ranking video, and the shorts would be best suited for the job. This won't be just a ranking video. It will also be a collective review of all 21 shorts, so this will technically be my longest Loud House review to date. Now before we get right into it, I just want to be upfront about a few things. Personal bias is going to play a factor in how each short is ranked. Some shorts I may like for similar reasons, but they may appear higher or lower on the list compared to other shorts I may like for vastly different reasons. Maybe it has something to do with a specific character. Perhaps one short stands out in a way that others don't. Who knows? Quite possibly, it could all be a matter of the short's context that could affect this placement on the list. In other words, my reasoning for why shorts are ranked the way they are is not going to be as consistent as both you and I would like it to be, but hey, it's my list. I can rank these shorts however I want. And finally, it should go without saying, but everything said here is just my opinion. If you happen to like or dislike a particular short I don't rank as high or as low as you do, then there's nothing wrong with that. This is all just for fun, so let's just have fun with this. Alrighty then, we have a lot of ground to cover, so let's not waste any more time. So now, join me as I, SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainer Ling, bring you my review/ranking video of all 21 shorts from The Loud House. Let's begin. Number 21, King of the Chair. This is my least favorite short from the series, and it's the one short I consider the absolute worst. My two biggest complaints would be how illogical it is with its storytelling and how poorly it presents nearly all of its central characters. Lynn Sr. brings home a new armchair after winning some kind of contest, and he specifically tells his kids they can't use it, and you already know what's going to happen next. Despite the kids being warned not to go anywhere near the chair given their history of breaking other things owned by their dad, the kids decide to use the chair anyway, resulting in the furniture getting dirty, dismantled, ripped apart, and pretty much becoming unusable for any regular and normal person. It's not so much the kids doing something they weren't supposed to do that annoys me. That's something you come to expect from this family. The real issue is that most of the kids don't even make the slightest attempt to fix any of the messes they created and just leave the chair as is. Lincoln is the only one who tries to clean the mess he made, but in the end he just throws a giant sheet over the chair, as if that's going to fix everything he and his sisters did. Another thing that really frustrates me about the entire conflict is how exactly did Lynn Sr. not notice Lincoln sleeping in his chair after he fell asleep on it the night before? The parents' bedroom is in the living room, so it would have been impossible for Lynn Sr. to not notice Lincoln and the greasy pizza stain on the chair when he first woke up in the morning. Seriously, how did Lynn Sr. manage to leave the house and not notice his own son sleeping on the chair or giant grease stain before going outside? Am I to assume he simply came home with the chair, ran off screen, and then supposedly went back outside, spent the rest of the night and the whole next day away from the house, and didn't come back inside the house until sunset? Just, how does any of this make sense? As you can tell, the story was constructed in a contrived way to have Lynn Sr. both conveniently absent and oblivious to what was going on just so the conflict could unfold. He doesn't even question why there was a sheet covering his chair when he was preparing to sit down on it, and then he acts all surprised when he sees his chair is completely destroyed. In other words, the dad was only relevant to the plot when the story needed him to be. Then there's the part where Rita tries to shame her kids for what they did, this being a slight callback to the strict warning she gave them at the beginning of the story, but then she gets exposed as a hypocrite when her husband finds her manuscript in the chair. Way to go, Mom. Then the story concludes with the kids apologizing for what they did, and they present their dad with his chair fully restored to its original glory. It's revealed Lana and Lisa took it to a repair shop to get it all fixed and cleaned up with a few additional upgrades. This resolution begs the obvious question. Why didn't they just take the chair to that repair shop the first time? I mean, that clearly was an option, and yet the two characters who made it happen didn't think to do it before their problems spiraled out of control? Like I said, contrived storytelling just so the conflict could happen. I'm just glad this wasn't a regular 10-minute episode. Things would have gotten a lot more agitating if it was. Overall, this short may hit the right beats when it comes to one of the core ideas of what the Loud House is all about, but it's so hard to ignore how illogical the story is presented and how poorly the characters are portrayed. Even with a predictable, heartfelt ending with the characters learning a lesson and making amends to their dad, it's not enough for it to be considered good given what happens leading up to the ending. Thankfully, this is the only short I would consider definitively bad, so everything else on the list will be a little bit more positive. And with that, let's move right along to the next short. Number 20, The 12 Days of Christmas. What can I really say about this one? It's just the Loud family singing a classic holiday song with the family rattling off a specific gift that accurately reflects their respective characters. What's noteworthy about the way the song is performed is that for each new day of Christmas that comes along, the lyrics are performed in birth order, starting with the eldest sibling and working its way down to the youngest. The song begins with Lori singing about the first day of Christmas, followed by Lenny singing about the second day, and so on until it reaches Lily on the 11th. However, Lily is the only family member who doesn't contribute to any of the singing, for obvious reasons, so her contribution to the song is performed by Lynn Sr. Then it all wraps up on the 12th day with Rita acknowledging her 11 kids trying to sneak a peek at their gifts. And of course, as it is with the original song, the lyrics about the previous days are presented in reverse order, beginning with the youngest sibling and working its way back up to the eldest. And that's pretty much it. It's not terrible like King of the Chair, but it's nowhere near the level of being great. It's basic in concept and simple in presentation. Nothing really worth writing home about, in my opinion. If you really like Christmas and/or fun cartoon variants of classic Christmas songs, you'll enjoy this one. As for me, well, let's just say I don't make it a priority to watch every December the same way I prioritize the Christmas specials from the TV series. I'll just leave it at that. Number 19. Sibling Speak. This short I find slightly better than the 12 Days of Christmas, but not by a lot. Sibling Speak is also very basic in concept and simple in presentation, but this one has a little more action, if that makes sense. It begins with Rita asking Lynn to tell Lincoln to take out the trash, and the message gets passed along from one sibling to the next, with Rita's original message straying further away from its intended meaning. That's because the girls were busy doing something when someone was giving them the message, therefore completely misunderstanding what it was they were being told. Essentially, the characters inadvertently end up playing a game of telephone, resulting in each of the girls' different messages ending with a word that rhymes with the word trash, such as flash and crash. The way the message is passed around is a pretty accurate representation of what goes on inside the Loud House itself. The characters are doing something that perfectly aligns with their respective personalities, and of course it gets a little chaotic along the way. Aside from that, everything else in the short isn't all too interesting. It ends with Lincoln finally receiving his mom's message, and despite Luann saying something that sounds absolutely nothing like what their mom said earlier, Lincoln instantly knows that the message was about him having to take out the trash. I get the joke they were going for, which was that living with a large family means you have to learn to speak sibling and therefore needing to decode certain phrases, but I don't know. This one just seemed a little too artificial for my liking. Plus, I found it confusing how Lincoln wasn't on the couch at the beginning of the short and then he just magically appears at the end. It really makes you wonder where he could have been during the preceding montage or how things would have played out had he been on the couch the whole time, but then I guess we wouldn't have had much of a short if that was the case. Either way, this is kind of a weak short in my opinion. Not bad by any means, just barely passable at being somewhat engaging. Number 18. 10-Headed Beast. Remember at the beginning of Project Loud House where Lincoln said the 10-headed beast had awoken when referring to his 10 sisters? Well, this short actually combines all the Loud sisters into a literal 10-headed beast, and that becomes the obstacle Lincoln and Clyde must overcome. The story mostly takes place in a fantasy sequence where Link the White-Haired and Clyde of the McBride clan are playing as barbarians on a quest to cure their boredom. They seek out a mythical artifact that can manipulate a black mirror that can project a variety of different images. In other words, they want to watch TV and they have to get the remote from the girls who are downstairs already using it. This leads to a showdown between the boys and the beast fighting for control of the remote, and the fantasy comes to an end when Lola gets their mother involved, thus putting an end to the epic battle. The best thing about the short is that it not only makes use of the typical childhood experience of playing pretend and having the protagonist imagine that they're big and powerful heroes embarking on a quest, but it also ties into the original idea of the TV series. One boy trying to survive in a household consisting of 10 girls, with the girls being collectively manifested as the beast he always tries to overcome. So, in a creative way, this short emphasizes the constant battle between the Loud siblings. The one thing about the short I don't particularly care about is how it ends with Lincoln and Clyde still wanting to play as barbarians, but they continue doing so wearing nothing but their underpants. I mean, it's fine if you're going to do that within the privacy of your own house, but the fact they were prepared to go to the food and fuel without any clothes and not even realizing it was a bridge too far. Need I remind you of the last time they were out in public and not wearing any pants? Well, at least they were really committed to their roles as barbaric warriors, that much I will say. So overall, this is a pretty okay short. It does a decent job of blending fantasy and reality, the make-believe battle was pretty neat, and the payoff is kinda what you would expect from the series. Number 17. Clyde and His Dads. For all the times I've complained about Harold and Howard McBride over the years, it's refreshing to see them have a moment where they aren't acting extremely overprotective and overly emotional about Clyde. This short features the McBride family trying a few crazy and outlandish methods to get their cats inside their cages so they can take them to the vet. As a dog owner, I can relate to the story because I've been through this battle many times before. It's not always easy trying to get your pet inside their cage since they know what it means. They don't want to go and they will fight you every step of the way. After 2 failed attempts, the McBrides accomplished their goal by using cucumbers to scare the cats, therefore tricking them into jumping into their cages for safety. I have no idea why cats are afraid of cucumbers, but according to the internet, they are. However, it turns out there was a mix-up on the calendar because that day was actually the day of Howard's dentist appointment. So Harold and Clyde must once again go to the extremes to get another family member prepared for the kind of doctor's visit said family member would prefer to avoid at all costs. It may seem like a goofy ending, but considering Howard is the most eccentric family member and the one who is the most prone to crying hysterically, this act of hyperparanoia fits his character very well. Overall, another decent short with a simple slice-of-life story mixed in with a little cartoon craziness. You'll definitely enjoy this one if the McBrides just happen to be your favorite characters. Number 16. So Long, Sucker. This short focuses on the Loud family pets, and even though I don't consider the episodes where they're the main characters to be the most amazing of the series, I still appreciate the Tom and Jerry style presentation when they act more like humans than actual animals. In this short, the pets become annoyed and can't get a moment's peace when Lynn Sr. uses a robot vacuum to clean the house while the family is away. So the pets devise a plan to destroy the vacuum by spraying it with water. However, this causes the vacuum to go haywire and start running amok around the house and shooting bolts of electricity in all directions. The pets manage to break the machine once and for all when Geo uses Charles's water bowl to deflect the electricity back towards the vacuum. Thinking they're going to be blamed for the giant mess caused by the vacuum, which technically isn't untrue, the pets work together to clean the house before the family returns, and everything appears to be back to normal. Unfortunately, Lynn Sr. believes the robot vacuum did such a good job that he intends to buy a few more, meaning the pets will have to put another cordless appliance out of its misery. So I would say if you're looking for some quick Loud House content that feels like something straight out of Tom and Jerry, you'll more than likely enjoy this short. It's silly, chaotic, and seeing the pets in the spotlight makes for a good change. Number 15. Musclefish. This short is very unique in the sense that it doesn't focus on any of the main Loud House characters, at least not directly. It focuses on one of Lincoln and Clyde's favorite comic book movie characters, a muscular-looking fish named Musclefish. Gee, how inventive of a name that is. Anyway, this short mostly takes place in a dream sequence after Lincoln and Clyde fall asleep watching a Musclefish movie marathon. They meet their hero at the food and fuel and try to help him become less extreme in how he behaves after Flip bans him from the store for causing damage. They get him all cleaned up and he starts acting much more sophisticated, but things take a turn for the worse when one of his arch enemies begins wreaking havoc inside the store. After his attempt to calmly ask Cephaloplex to stop causing trouble, Musclefish reverts to his old extreme ways and saves the day. He also gets his food and fuel VIP status reinstated, and then we get a butterfly effect ending to bring everything to a close. Lincoln and Clyde wake up and assume everything they saw was just a dream, but seeing Musclefish on the TV thanking the boys and drinking a Flippy leaves them feeling very confused. To me, the biggest selling point to the short is how it's presented as a somewhat action-packed comic book adventure. Admittingly, there's not a lot of action, but the fact it's a superhero story that doesn't revolve around Lincoln and Clyde's Ace Savvy and One-Eyed Jack personas just makes the plot feel more, as I said, unique. So yeah, I can't really complain about Musclefish, both the title of the short and the character himself. He has a nice redemption arc, as minor and rushed as it is, and I do really like the accent he was given. Is that Scottish or Irish? I'm pretty sure it's Scottish. Overall, this is a fun little comic book inspired story, and as I often say, having Clink and McCloud take a back seat while giving other characters the chance to be the main protagonist can make for a more enjoyable experience. At least in my opinion. Number 14. Super Switcheroo-niverse. I swear I did not plan on the two shorts about Musclefish to be paired back to back on this list. It just happened to work out that way. This right here is honestly one of the most bizarre shorts I've ever seen. Because the bulk of the story is told entirely through Lincoln in the form of a comic book, nothing is off limits when it comes to the action. The story is about Musclefish living what is considered a normal day, according to Lincoln, and apparently he works as a pottery teacher when he's not fighting crime. At the beginning, two of his students lose their ball just before class starts, and Musclefish spends most of the plot running around the city, not to mention multiple realities, trying to get it back. This entire chase sequence is so far out there in terms of visuals and presentation that you're just left staring at the screen and asking, what the hell is going on? What am I looking at here? One moment you see Musclefish on a motorcycle chasing the ball that's also riding on a motorcycle, and the next moment you see him and the ball going into a movie theater and watching a black and white film about Musclefish chasing the ball. Then out of nowhere, the original chase sequence continues into a construction zone with Musclefish trying to use simple algebra to catch the ball, and again you start to ask, is this really happening right now? That's not even half of what goes on, but it's easy to see what direction the story is taking from that quick summary alone. The plot jumps from one reality to another, and it's so hard to keep track of everything, and I think that was the point. I like to believe the story was intentionally written in the most insane and confusing way possible just to screw with the audience. If that's true, then the writers absolutely succeeded. It's one of those things where it looks really stupid, but you can't help but laugh at how stupid the whole thing is. Seriously, you're barely 1 minute into the story and suddenly nothing makes sense. At that point, you're like, F it, who needs logic? Let's just watch it for the laughs. So Musclefish manages to catch the ball, now sporting eyes and a mouth, because reasons, and just when he's about to start teaching his pottery class, the students tell him he already started teaching 5 minutes ago. Our hero confronts a different version of himself created by some kind of squid monster, and then that turns out to be a simulation created by the Lisa robot from A Dark and Stormy Night. Again, what the f*** is going on here, people? The real kicker in all this is that it turns out Lincoln told the story to Mr. Bollhoffner's class, and his teacher is so pissed off because that wasn't the assignment he was supposed to be working on for the past 2 weeks. Then while Lincoln is getting chewed out by Bollhoffner, both versions of Musclefish are watching from the classroom window, and then the short ends with the regular Musclefish asleep at the movie theater, throwing the audience for a loop one final time. All I can really say about this short is that you'll be in for one hell of a ride from start to finish, and that it's best to simply toss all levels of thinking out the window. It's so goofy in its visuals, especially with the number of bizarre character designs seen in the background. It's completely insane in its writing, and it's as crazy and cartoony as it can get. One last piece of interesting trivia. When Musclefish goes through the universe with the Loud siblings sitting on the couch, as shown in the opening credits, Lily is depicted in her Season 5 design, but Lori is still with her siblings even though she's supposed to be away at college. Whether this was intentional or an animation goof, it is interesting to see what the opening credits would have looked like had the showrunners decided to upgrade the intro to reflect the change in the status quo. Other than that, Super Switcheroo-niverse is a great short with so much going on, and if you're in the mood for something totally outlandish where nothing has to make sense in the slightest, you'll have a lot of fun with this one. It's just that wild. And speaking of wild, number 13, Deuces Wild. For this being only the third official short in the series, Deuces Wild really lives up to its title in a fun and creative way. It does a great job of blending reality and fantasy, and this blend is best represented during the biggest highlight of the story, the action-packed comic book sequence. It's about Lincoln and Clyde donning the personas of Ace Savvy and One-Eyed Jack and trying to find the source of such a foul-smelling odor, which turns out to be a giant gas monster. When they can't destroy the monster on their own, the Full Deck, aka the Loud Sisters dressed as their comic book alter egos, arrive to assist Ace and Jack, and they work together to put an end to the monster's wrath. It's an awesome fantasy sequence with superheroes saving the day, but in reality, it was just Lincoln, Clyde, and the girls working together to change Lily's diaper, the source of the foul smell from earlier. Aside from the comic book fantasy, another thing I really like about this short was how it showed a less chaotic side to the Loud House. Rather than Lincoln and his sisters butting heads with one another, as you come to expect, this short shows the family being on the same page and helping each other to resolve a problem and remaining on good terms throughout. It's those moments that always stand out to me, and considering how the short ends with Rita telling the kids to take out the trash, they'll definitely need to be in unison when they have to face off against the giant garbage monster. A monster made out of garbage. Now why does that sound so familiar? I suppose my only nitpick would be at the beginning where Lincoln was preparing to read his comic book while still wearing his clothes. Yeah, I know reading comics in his underpants was mostly a thing in Season 1 and was pretty much abandoned afterwards, minus a few exceptions in Season 2, but hey, you guys know how I am about consistency. Regardless of that, Deuces Wild is an overall fun little short where all the main characters play a significant role in an action-packed / pseudo-fantasy adventure. This one may be old and kinda dated given how the Ace Savvy personas have rarely been seen on the show after the infamous Kings of the Con episode, but it will always be a classic in my book. Number 12, Wet, Lather, and Scrub. At one time, I didn't really think too much about this one and thought it was just okay. But 1 year after its original television premiere, and more specifically when the entirety of the song was officially released in 2021, I developed a newfound appreciation for it. Also, before 2022, this was part of my top 10 list for best Loud House shorts. I can only describe this music video in one sentence. This is the most Lisa-coded thing the series has ever done in less than 4 minutes. Given the song's subject matter and how she goes about explaining it to her classmates, this short is a perfect fit for her character. First, she tries to be all blunt and straightforward about why everyone needs to keep themselves clean, which obviously confuses her classmates, and so she breaks into a song and dance number to help better illustrate her message. What's noteworthy about Wet, Lather, and Scrub is that a shorter version of the song originally debuted in March 2020 as a public service announcement during the COVID-19 pandemic. However, storyboard artist Sarah Johnson clarified that even though the song came out during the pandemic, the short was first pitched in July 2019. The music video making its debut during the 2020 pandemic was nothing more than a coincidence, and the subject matter of washing one's hands was never intended to be a PSA. Personally, I'm a little skeptical of that last part. Considering Lisa is singing about what happens when people don't keep themselves clean and advocating on how to avoid and prevent the spread of germs and other infectious diseases, this short does give off some serious PSA vibes. But regardless of that, the song itself is very good. It's a simple but effective way of teaching the importance of maintaining good personal hygiene. And hey, Laura Jill Miller does a phenomenal job with her singing for Lisa. Still, I'm a little surprised this wasn't presented as more of a West Coast rap song. Now that would have made this short way more Lisa-coded than it already was. So yeah, Wet, Lather, and Scrub is very entertaining. That is, of course, once you get past some of the more gross and sickly visuals of Lisa's classmates. But other than that, it's a great vibe from start to finish. Number 11. Right Where We Belong. I'm going to be honest with you all. This is the one short on the list where I both love it because of how great the song is, but when combined with the visuals, it just feels perplexing and to a degree kinda cheap and ridiculous in its editing. I know that's a very strange way of putting it, so I'll try to explain my thoughts as best I can. Right Where We Belong originally appeared as the final song in the Season 6 episode, Save Royal Woods. Worried that Joyce Crandall was going to flood the town in order to make room for a new Great Lake, Lincoln and the rest of the townsfolk sang a song about the special memories and good times they had as a final attempt to persuade Joyce to leave Royal Woods alone. On the surface, I have nothing against the lyrics and the visuals that accompany it, at least in some areas. We get some quick history and backstory to some of the main and minor characters. In the context of the episode, the song was to demonstrate that Royal Woods is not just some random town that has nothing special to offer. The lyrics are like one big collective and metaphorical way of pleading with Miss Crandall to spare Royal Woods because she would be destroying the things that make their town special on a deep and/or personal level. This, however, doesn't translate too well when watching the short. It begins at the Loud House with Lincoln singing about how Royal Woods is much more than you see. Okay, I get how he's saying his town is more than averagely marginal, but what exactly prompted him to say that? These lyrics make more sense in the episode because Joyce didn't see Royal Woods as anything more than a meaningless town and not worthy of being spared from demolition. That's why Lincoln had to convince her that Royal Woods was much more than what she was willing to see. In the context of the short, it just feels like Lincoln is randomly breaking into song for no apparent reason. And actually, this would be a good segue into my critique about the short's somewhat cheap and ridiculous editing. The short mostly consists of the same footage used in Save Royal Woods, and it also goes out of its way to change a few things that makes it seem as if they were really trying to make this version vastly different from the one that was used in the episode. I mean, you can tell the animators kept a lot of Lincoln's body movements the same when he was swinging around the lamppost and simply replaced the background with one from Franklin Avenue. Even the shot of him singing in front of his family and several townsfolk is lifted directly from the episode, the only difference being who's standing on the sidewalk and the Loud House itself in the background. Still, I'd be lying if I said this one particular moment didn't work in the context of the short, because Lincoln reminiscing about the tree where he first read A Savvy actually makes sense. There is a tree near the Loud House. So, compared to the official episode, the way the short introduces the song makes more sense than having Lincoln start the song in the middle of a random street far away from his home and then immediately cutting to the tree on Franklin Avenue. Then there's the scene where Lisa runs down a list of the many rich minerals their town has to offer. In the episode, the scene cuts from Lisa to Lola and Lynn with the latter saying, "You could have mentioned that earlier." In the short, the scene cuts from Lisa to two construction workers with one of them on a jackhammer saying, "You could have mentioned that earlier," before making contact with the oil Lisa was just talking about. Similar setup, same dialogue exchange, but different context between the two versions. On the one hand, the scene with the construction workers does make sense in its own right. But on the other hand, when listening to the song in the episode, Lisa's mineral list was her way of explaining why Royal Woods is worth keeping around. In turn, her sister's reactions were their way of saying that flooding the town would mean losing out on very important resources, so maybe Lisa should have brought that up much sooner. Now, despite whatever critiques I've had about this short thus far in terms of the song's context differing from the official episode, I really do enjoy the middle section where we see random clips of the characters doing and singing about a variety of different things. None of these moments were featured in the episode, so this montage is exclusive to only this short. Speaking of being exclusive, this short features Lori in a few scenes. In theory, this extended version of the song features Lori's only official on-screen appearance for Save Royal Woods. Granted, I don't know if this short was made before, during, or after the production of Save Royal Woods, but the scenes with Lori at Jean Juan's and standing behind a tree with the rest of her family seem to suggest that she was supposed to appear in the episode, but the parts of the song in which she makes an appearance were cut for time. Arguably, you could say the middle section of the song is either an extended, deleted, and/or alternative scene that didn't make it into the final version of the episode, but the actual episode suggests otherwise. Besides the scene where Lenny is holding her phone when she and her siblings are featured in the 3x3 character grid, Lori does not make any official on-screen appearance at any point in the episode. She wasn't at the town meeting at the beginning, and she wasn't with her family during the closing song reprise at the end. She was at Fairway University by this point in the series, so her absence from the episode is perfectly understandable. She is, however, briefly depicted in the crowd as the camera zooms out to show the giant dam behind them. But in the next shot, she's nowhere to be seen, therefore indicating that Lori's crowd cameo was simply an animation error. Plus, the shot of the Loud singing from behind the tree in the short wasn't featured in the episode. Instead, it's a shot of Lincoln singing on top of the bulldozer Joyce was going to use to break the dam, once again reinforcing the fact that Lori wasn't supposed to appear in person at any point in the episode, let alone the song number. If she was really meant to appear, she'd have been standing next to Lenny in the character grid instead of appearing on her sister's phone. So to wrap things up, Right Where We Belong is a great song with very good visuals that best represent how special Royal Woods is to everyone who lives there. But like I said, this makes more sense when watching Save Royal Woods because the lyrics are tied to the overall plot of the episode. Listening to and watching the song unfold in the context of this short, however, creates a whole different experience that honestly doesn't work all that well. I appreciate the fact the song has a few additional lyrics and scenes that weren't present in the episode, so at least the short gives the audience the kind of exclusive content you won't find on TV. Even if you ignore all the differences in context between the two versions, it's the song itself that really makes the short worthwhile. It's smooth, catchy, and it can invoke a lot of impromptu singing, much to the annoyance of the former Undersecretary of Water Leisure. Phew! That was a lot of talking for just one short. I guess I had a lot more to say about it than I realized. I apologize if that section dragged on much longer than I was expecting. I do tend to get carried away, and you guys know how passionate I am about the show. Anyway, with that in mind, we're now more than halfway through the list, and we finally reached the top 10. How will the remaining shorts be ranked? Well, let's keep going. Number 10, Flippy Jingle. Admittedly, I like both this and Right Where We Belong equally, but I prefer Flippy Jingle a little bit more, and it's for one reason: context. Oh god, he said context, here we go again. What I mean by this is that compared to Right Where We Belong, where the song makes more sense in the episode than it does in the short, Flippy Jingle has the opposite effect. The song lyrics work better in the context of the short than it does in the episode. In the episode, Flippy Jingle feels so out of place because, unlike the other three songs, the lyrics don't necessarily contribute anything meaningful to the plot. Technically, you could say the song has some significance because Mayor Davis says the town is going to build the biggest Flippy in history. In the short, however, that lyric is replaced with Clyde singing about the Flippy's many different flavors, and honestly, this change works much better in terms of the song's overall context. Hopefully you see where I'm going with this. Just imagine a different version of the episode where the song is replaced with regular background music and a few shots of the townsfolk drinking and swimming in the signature frozen drink are completely removed. You would still have the same construction montage and the story wouldn't have changed at all. In other words, Flippy Jingle has the capability of being its own short in which the song can be removed and played separately from Save Royal Woods, whereas Right Where We Belong does not have the same capability. This is best exemplified by the fact that all the scenes shown during the Flippy Jingle music video are completely original. There is no recycled footage lifted from Save Royal Woods, and there are no obvious background edits that change the location of the characters when they're singing. Because of this, characters such as Mayor Davis, Liam, and a few others don't participate in any capacity. The short begins with some girls complaining about the hot weather and needing something cold to drink, and Lincoln and Clyde recommend that they try a Flippy. This leads into a music montage of Clinkin' McCloud, Flip, the Loud Sisters, and even the pets showing how much they love the Food and Fuel's signature frozen drink. From the over-the-top and colorful visuals to the catchy rock and roll tune performed by Luna and the rest of the cast, everything about this short has the look and feel of a commercial. It goes out of its way to really sell you on how great Flippies are and how you'd be crazy to not get your hands on one. Of course, like some commercials, it ends with Flip running down a long list of weird and freaky side effects you might feel if you intend on consuming the drink. I just love the fact that even the kids are advising against anyone from contacting the Food and Drug Administration about what might happen. I mean, they admit they don't even know why they love Flippies so much, but they can't stop drinking them despite all the potential side effects. Well, according to the episode Time Trap, Flippies contain plutonium, so maybe that's what causes everyone to get addicted to drinking them and why they can't resist the taste. Apparently, people in this universe can obtain and consume a radioactive metal placed in a frozen drink, never run the risk of suffering from severe health complications, and nobody seems to notice or care. Cartoon logic at its finest, am I right? Overall, Flippy Jingle may not be my favorite song from Save Royal Woods, but when viewed in the context of this music video, it is one of my favorite Loud House shorts. The visuals during the montage were very eye-popping, the extended version of the song was downright amazing, and of course my favorite moment was the Kool-Aid Man reference when Flip broke through the wall, even saying the classic line, "Oh yeah!" Definitely deserving of being in my top 10 list for sure. Number 9. Slice of Life. Oh, come on, people, you knew this had to be in the top 10 somewhere. This is the second official short going by production order, but this is also the first short to have an animation style much closer to that of the TV series. The story is about Lincoln explaining how it's hard to get seconds at dinner time, and this is demonstrated when he and his sisters have a dispute over who gets the last slice of pizza. With a runtime of less than 2 minutes, this short does a quick but creative job at illustrating one of the core aspects of the series, which would be the Loud siblings fighting over anything and everything. First, they have a verbal back and forth about who is more deserving of getting the last pizza slice. Then the disagreement escalates into a physical confrontation. And finally, the conflict is resolved when it turns out their parents got a second pizza for free. Question: if each pizza has 12 slices, wouldn't the kids just reignite the same problem they just had a few seconds ago? Probably. But hey, it's a never-ending fight that comes with the territory. The best part of the short would be the anime/manga-inspired character designs for each of the kids. To them, their fight over the pizza was going to be brutal, and the intense background music only helped to enhance the experience. Even the pets looked badass when they started fighting over the pizza slice the kids left behind. So the idea of fighting over food runs through the domestic side of the family as well. Overall, this short is just great, no doubt about it. All the Loud siblings had an opportunity to have at least one line of dialogue, some lines best demonstrating what some of their personalities are like, and the visuals did an exceptional job at illustrating one of the most recurring themes of the series. You can certainly never go wrong with this one. Number 8. Trash Grab. As of 2023, and at the time of this video, this is the last short produced for the series. Regardless of whether there will be more shorts made later on, this one right here is one of the best examples of the pets being the main stars and interacting with other animal characters, which in this case would be Nacho the raccoon. Before Season 8, Nacho was just a minor character who never really did anything except simply exist alongside Flip, his owner and best friend. Here, he actually plays a significant role. The story is about the Loud family pets getting annoyed with Nacho constantly stealing all the discarded food from their garbage can, and they try to stop him from taking something they feel doesn't belong to him. Well, you know, real-life raccoons are attracted to garbage, so Nacho stealing food from a trash can shouldn't be all that surprising, even if he was doing it just to piss off the pets. Still, the pets wanted to get rid of him, but trying to carry out their mission became a struggle. The plot is very similar to the Season 2 episode, Pets Peeved. The pets are mad about another animal taking something away from them, and they devise several plans to get rid of their enemy. Unfortunately, their plans backfire, but they eventually get rid of Nacho by luring him into a cage and effectively locking him away for what they hope will be forever. The pets feel very accomplished in what they did, but when a deeply sad Flip comes by the house asking if anyone had seen Nacho, they immediately regret what they had done. In the end, the pets set the raccoon free, become friends, and Flip reunites with his little buddy. In my opinion, the best thing about Trash Grab would be Flip and his relationship with Nacho. Most of the time, Flip is usually depicted as a self-centered and money-grubbing jerk who cares very little about anyone other than himself. However, this short puts him in a more sympathetic light, and you really feel sorry for him when he couldn't find his pet raccoon. He was legitimately worried about someone other than himself and didn't know if Nacho was alive or dead. Being a pet owner myself, this is one of the worst things you can think of if your pet were to ever run away. You can tell how much Flip loves Nacho when you see him feeding him during the little thought bubble montage. Those little moments were very sweet. Nacho also has a mutual respect for Flip when he gets all emotional about the missing pet poster his owner made. They both may be sneaky and conniving, but the love they have for each other is strong, and this short did a fantastic job of demonstrating it. Overall, even if this short is just a different version of an episode that happened all the way back in Season 2, I think Trash Grab is way more interesting than Pets Peeved. It gave Nacho the chance to be in the spotlight, and his dynamic with Flip was very wholesome. In hindsight, I consider this a prelude to what happens to them in the Season 8 episode, Whether or Not. Check out the episode and you'll see what I mean. All that's left for me to say is that if this turns out to be the final ever short for the Loud House, they at least ended things on a satisfying note. Number 7. Robot Sitcom. Similar to So Long Sucker, this short has a central cast of characters that are non-human. The story primarily focuses on Lisa's three main robots: Todd, Mr. Reinforced Titanium Alloy Arms, and FriendBot 1000. They, along with a sentient toaster, live in Lisa's underground bunker as roommates, and they have a pet named Tentacle, the same tentacle that first appeared in the episode No Guts, No Glory. Each of the three humanoid robots were featured in several previous episodes starring Lisa, obviously, and the fact the showrunners decided to make an entire story about what were supposed to be one-and-done characters is actually kinda nice. I can also appreciate the idea of presenting the short in the form of a sitcom, complete with interlude music and an audience laugh track. It does sound silly on the surface, but I don't know. Seeing a bunch of robots trying to live together under one roof just sounds like something the Loud House would do. The story is about the three humanoid robots growing fed up with their roommate Toaster because of his perceived selfishness, and they decide to kick him out. Their new roommate is a sentient teddy bear, which I'm going to assume is another creation of Lisa's, but even he becomes too much for the robots to handle. After it's revealed Tentacle had gone missing because Teddy let him outside without a leash, the robots go searching for their lost pet, and they realize how much better things were when Toaster was their roommate. Toaster may not have ever taken their pet for a walk, but he certainly wouldn't let it outside without a leash. In the end, it's Toaster who finds Tentacle, the three robots apologize for how they had treated their old friend, and their little bread cooking machine becomes their roommate again. Oh yeah, and apparently Toaster was able to permanently get rid of Teddy. I'm not one to ruin a heartfelt and sentimental group hug, but damn Toaster, you scary! Overall, this short is such a novelty compared to all the others. Lisa's robots may not be the most popular characters in the series, but for them to have the rare opportunity to be in the spotlight is something I can definitely appreciate. They even started to make more appearances following this short, so it's nice to know the series hasn't completely forgotten about them. It's amazing how a character like Todd went from being a one-off machine in making the grade to Lisa's full-time lab assistant and mechanical best friend. And speaking of Lisa, you'd be shocked to learn that my favorite highlight of Robot Sitcom was the only human character who didn't even have a single line of dialogue. There's a picture of Lisa hanging on the wall, and it appears in almost every shot whenever the action takes place inside the bunker. Everything about Lisa's picture, from her facial expression to her desk and even the background, is so distracting, but it's so amusing to me. I don't know why, but it just is. Even the part where she looks confused when watching the robots search for Tentacle in the backyard was kinda funny. She just lowers herself away from the window and she's all like, yeah, I'm just going to leave now. So as far as I'm concerned, Robot Sitcom is fantastic. It has a very unique cast of characters with a very unique way of storytelling, and it being presented in under 4 minutes was perfect. I couldn't see this short lasting any longer than that, which is the exact opposite of how I feel about the sequel. Speaking of which... Number 6. Robot Reboot. Much like the two shorts about Musclefish from earlier, I didn't plan on the two shorts about Lisa's robots to be paired back to back either. Their placement on the list just happened to work out that way. But anyhow, like I said in the last section, this is the sequel to Robot Sitcom, as far as I know, and this short actually had the potential to be a regular episode of the series. That's what I really like about Robot Reboot. It feels like a cut-down version of a standard 10-minute episode, and you feel like there's more to the story that isn't being shown. With how the plot is set up and how the story is able to resolve the conflict, there could have easily been another 4 minutes tacked on to its runtime. The story is about Lisa planning to submit a video documentary to a film festival in the hopes of winning the Scientific Community Robotic Award and Grant, or SCRAG for short. However, when she reviews the footage of her robots interacting with her sisters, she doesn't like what she sees. You know, with how the footage is being played on the TV while the silhouettes of Lisa and her robots are moving and talking during the presentation, I couldn't be the only one thinking this was inspired from Mystery Science Theater 3000. Anyway, Lisa doesn't like how her robots are acting out and not performing their respective jobs properly, but Todd tells her that's how she programmed them. So, at night, while her robots are asleep, Lisa decides to reconfigure their personality settings by removing their human emotions. Even though Lisa is satisfied with the new footage of her robots interacting with her family, despite their more unconventional methods of conduct, the completely emotionless robots now only view Lisa as a business partner, and they kick her out of her own bunker. Feeling bad about what she had done to her robot friends, despite getting the scientific results she wanted, Lisa apologizes for trying to change them and decides to drop out of the film festival. She restores the robots' true personalities, and the story ends with everyone laughing and having a good time watching a Loud family blooper reel. Isn't it great when you can strategically place multiple cameras around your home and no one ever suspects a thing? The biggest selling point to the short, at least for me, would be the dynamic between Lisa and her robots. It's clear she loves her robots, and her robots also have a mutual respect for her, but that's because Lisa made them that way. This child genius programmed these robots to perform specific functions, as all machines are meant to do, but she also gave them emotions and the ability to think for themselves. Because the robots have emotions, they're more prone to acting out and losing their temper just like a human does, as demonstrated during the first set of review footage. A true robot, on the other hand, would be completely devoid of all emotions and would only perform the tasks they were programmed to do, as shown during the second set of review footage. In the case of the latter, Lisa may have programmed her robots as emotionless machines performing their jobs efficiently without any issues, as it realistically should be. This came at the cost of the robots looking at their creator as a business partner and no longer a friend. Machines realistically can't develop friendships with humans, and in her own way, Lisa made sure of that. Essentially, Lisa goes through a quick redemption arc where she realizes that she'd rather have somewhat functional robots that love her than fully functional machines that don't. It's a creative twist on the story about a character who learns that all the achievements in their life are not worth it if it means losing your friends. It shows how even a certified genius like Lisa can be flawed in how she views what she considers her perfect creations. Overall, Robot Reboot is just as good as the sitcom. The multiple video montages of the robots and the Loud family were great. Lisa learned what price she was going to pay if it meant winning the Scrag Film Festival. And of course, I had to laugh at the Drost image trope with Lisa and the robots. There's a picture on the wall depicting everyone sitting on the couch, and everyone is pretty much seated in the same exact position as shown in the picture, minus a few little visual differences. I swear the person who wrote the script was watching that one episode from SpongeBob with Mrs. Puff and thought, maybe I should do the same visual gag for this Loud House short I'm supposed to write. As I said, the story could have easily been stretched out to fit the runtime of a regular 10-minute episode, and there's plenty of ideas on what could have been done to fill the runtime. Still, even for the runtime of about 6 minutes, Robot Reboot still delivers on all levels. Number 5. Bathroom Break, or going by its original title, The Loud House. Yeah, you shouldn't be surprised to find this short ranked this high on the list. This is the first introduction to the show before it was officially picked up by Nickelodeon, so I don't think it would have been right to rank this below the top 5. A brief history about the short first. It was originally pitched to Nickelodeon in 2013 and was later approved for development in January 2014. Later that same year in June, The Loud House was officially greenlit by Nickelodeon, and the rest, as they say, is history. The original version of the pilot, simply titled The Loud House, was posted on the Animation Magazine YouTube channel in June 2014. Nearly 2 years later in April 2016, just a few weeks before its official television debut, Nickelodeon posted a different version of the short to its own Loud House YouTube channel. This version included new background music and a new series logo, but it was also given one noteworthy upgrade. The short was given a title card in the style of how the TV series episodes would be presented, retroactively removing the original title of The Loud House from the shot of Lincoln's sisters in the upstairs hallway. Therefore, the new official title for this short is Bathroom Break. I'm sort of split on the title change, but I'm getting a little off track here. Anyway, as far as my thoughts go for this 3-minute test pilot, what can I really say that hasn't already been said before by so many other fans? It's a fantastic introduction to what The Loud House is all about. It demonstrates the central idea of the series. One boy trying to survive in a house with 5 older sisters and 5 younger sisters. Lincoln's secret to surviving the craziness in The Loud House? Always have a plan. In this short, Lincoln tries to implement his plan of using patience, perseverance, and problem solving as he tries to make his way past his sisters to get to the bathroom. It's not as easy as it seems, and he really gets put through the ringer. But even when it looks as though he's been defeated, the man with the plan still manages to successfully make use of the 3 Ps. He clears out the bathroom and feels good knowing he was able to accomplish his goal. Unfortunately, his victory is short-lived when he realizes there's no toilet paper and his sisters can't hear his cry for help because of all the commotion they're creating outside. Poor kid just can't win. Overall, I really can't find anything negative to say about this short pilot. It does a tremendous job of giving the viewer a taste of what they're in for when they begin watching the first season of the TV series. We get a small sample of what the personalities are like for each of Lincoln's 10 sisters, and most of them have at least one line of dialogue, Lisa being the only exception. The only other thing left to say is that this wouldn't be the last time this animation style would be used in the series. It was used again for the episode Left in the Dark, the first official episode of the TV series. You can tell it's the same animation style when you look at the color of Lisa's sweater and the way Lucy's hair is drawn. So with all things considered, Bathroom Break hits it out of the park when it comes to introducing its characters and how the story is presented. It captures the essence of the Loud House perfectly. Number 4. No End in Bite. Just like the other shorts on this list, this one is also about a character who uses their imagination to create a fantasy for themselves. It begins with Lucy reading a Vampires of Melancholia novel in which Edwin is captured by pirates who intend to end his life by exposing him to the sun. Unfortunately, Lucy is unable to finish her book because Lynn ripped out the last page and used it as a makeshift diaper for Lily. Lynn suggests Lucy should come up with her own ending, and that's when Lucy taps into her creative side and dives into the realm of egocentric fanfiction. She imagines herself as a stowaway named Lucinda, and she and Fangs quickly dispose of the pirates and shield Edwin from the light just before the sun rises. Edwin repays Lucinda by fulfilling her wish to become a vampire. But the fantasy comes to an abrupt end when Lynn says she went to the library and got her sister a new copy of her novel to make up for ruining the first one. Even though Lucy reads the official ending of the story and has nothing negative to say about it, she likes her ending a lot more. I mean, can you really blame her? Overall, this short may be very quick and very simple, but in my opinion, it's the best when it comes to a character using their imagination. Considering Lucy is a huge fan of Edwin and vampires, fancies herself as an up-and-coming poet, and has shown an interest in creative writing in general, No End in Bite covers each of those aspects of her character flawlessly. Her fantasy with Edwin and the pirates was really good, and there's no denying her Lucinda outfit was very adorable. So, like I said, this short took the idea of a character using their creativity to the fullest, and of course loving the results of their own fantasy. Well, you know what they say, you just can't beat the power of imagination. Number 3. Put a Sock in It. On my ranking list, this short is my pick for best ensemble performance by the entire Loud family, and I'm not just talking about the 11 kids. The parents also play a small role, so everyone here has the chance to do something. Not only that, but the story takes a simple childhood experience like playing with sock puppets and undoubtedly turning it into somewhat of a competition, something the Loud kids are all too familiar with. It begins with the kids trying to stop Lily from crying, and they get the idea of putting on a sock puppet show to calm her down, which inadvertently turns into a contest to see who can put her to sleep first. The 10 older siblings split up into teams, Lisa and Lana, Luna and Luann, with unwanted guest star Mr. Coconuts, Lincoln and Lucy, Lori and Lenny, and Lola and Lynn. Unfortunately, each of the team's respective puppet shows fall apart for one reason or another, and this only appears to upset Lily even more. Everyone's failures lead to all 10 older siblings fighting among themselves and demanding a do-over performance. Strangely, despite their bickering, Lily manages to quietly fall asleep. At first, I thought this was completely random because it appeared as if the conflict was resolved way too easily, but looking back, I noticed how Lily was yawning and getting tired as the story played out. Apparently, her siblings' multiple failures were enough to put her to sleep. Sadly, the peacefulness doesn't last long because the parents decide to put on their own little sock puppet show, and Lynn Sr.'s cowbell reignited the problem the kids had already fixed. Overall, I cannot find one bad thing to say about this short. It makes great use of the entire Loud family, the multiple sock puppet designs were very creative, and their many attempts to put on a good show, all ending in disaster, were the top highlights. With all things considered, this is one top-tier Loud House short with incredible replay value. Okay everyone, we're down to the last 2. If you've been paying attention, you know which ones I have left to talk about. Those would be The Maltese Bear and A Crime to Die For. Remember when I said personal bias was going to play a factor in how the shorts were going to be ranked? Knowing that, it really shouldn't surprise you that these 2 shorts starring Lenny made it into the top 5. After all, she is my second favorite character of the series, and how these 2 shorts make use of her character also helped in the ranking. So now the time has come to ask the following. Which short is my pick for number 2 and number 1 respectively? Which one am I going to pick? Am I going to choose that one, or am I going to choose that one? In this order, my pick for number 2 and my pick for number 1 is... both of them. I'm completely serious, guys. I honestly cannot choose one over the other. I find both Lenny-centric shorts to be the best of the best. I may only have one minor critique for each of them, but the overall presentation of each respective story and its characters make up for each of the short's minor flaws. But before I talk about those, I want to first highlight the biggest positives each short has to offer. The first one would be how both Maltese and Crime are presented like classic mystery-solving movies, complete with a black and white filter and the characters dressed in vintage 1940s clothing. The animators could have easily drawn everyone in their regular clothes, but if the story is going for a classic mystery-solving aesthetic, both in visual and tone, the characters have to look the part. This brings me to the characters themselves. With their era-appropriate clothing, some of which being a very accurate reflection to certain characters like Lola and Lynn, the one that really stands out from everyone else is Lenny. It's not so much the fact that she's dressed up as a detective that draws attention to the audience, but it's the fact that she's the mystery-solving protagonist. But why is this so important? Well, in most cases, it's usually Lincoln and any one of his friends who are given the spotlight in episodes where the story is set up as a classic whodunit. Because of this, you might have expected Lincoln to play the role of the detective in each of these shorts, seeing how that's usually the standard. This time, the protagonist is someone whose name isn't Lincoln, and it's probably the last member of the Loud family you would have ever expected to be the one to solve the mystery. However, I love the fact that it's Lenny and nobody else. It's not just because her brother is the one taking a back seat for a change, but it's also because it shows Lenny's more intelligent side. She may be clumsy, naive, and has the tendency to fall victim to the ever-cliche dumb blonde stereotype, but she's not completely stupid. She has shown signs of being a lot smarter than she's given credit for. Like she said in It's a Loud, 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 Loud House, there's more in her head than just air. Both Maltese and Crime do a brilliant job of demonstrating the key aspects to Lenny's character. She has her moments where she acts like a dumb blonde, but she's also smart enough to crack the cases she's given. It goes to show that you really can't underestimate someone like Lenny, because despite her shortcomings, she just may surprise you by doing something many people might assume is beyond her ability. Alright, that just about covers all the central positives for both shorts. Now I'm going to talk about the individual plots and what each one has to offer. First, there's the Maltese bear. The story begins when Lola discovers her stuffed bear, Mr. Sprinkles, is missing, and she wants Lenny to find out who took him and the money contained within. She finds her first clue at the scene of the crime, and later suspects Luna of being the money thief when she hears her sister playing a piano she got from Chunk. However, Luna has an alibi on how she got the piano, and then she indirectly gives Lenny another possible lead to who may have committed the crime. Lenny goes to confront Lola's trusty car mechanic, but Lana also has an alibi. Thinking the case may not be resolved, it's at that moment Lana reveals that the cookie crumbs Lenny found earlier were actually crumbs from a dog biscuit. This leads to Lenny finding the one who really took Mr. Sprinkles. It was the family dog Charles, and Lenny deduces he just wanted the chew toy. Or so she thinks. The one thing I really like about the story is that it realistically could have gone in two different directions and it would have ended the same exact way. Besides the official ending, the story could have also ended much faster had Lenny quickly figured out that the cookie was actually a dog biscuit and therefore drastically reducing the number of possible culprits. Regardless of how fast or slow it would have taken for Lenny to solve the mystery, the story we got was still set up and presented very well. Each of Lenny's supposed suspects gave her a subtle clue on who could have committed the crime, and going based on the evidence, the dog was the guilty one. My only criticism is that there's no fallout after Lenny finds Mr. Sprinkles. Yes, she did find the missing stuffed animal, but Lola also said that it was a bear full of cash. It's revealed Charles didn't take Mr. Sprinkles just because he wanted a chew toy. He also wanted to get his paws on all the money Lola was hiding. Don't get me wrong, it was still a funny twist of an ending. Still, it actually would have been interesting to see Lola confront Lenny by saying she's happy that her bear has been found, but the valuables contained within were still missing, meaning the money thief is still on the loose. Lenny could then say something like, "A detective's work is never done, as there's always another mystery to solve." Then again, you have to ask yourself, why would a dog want to get their paws on money in the first place? Seems kinda random. Well, if past episodes are anything to go by, I can think of a few good reasons why Charles would need to get his paws on all that green stuff. Gotta impress the ladies somehow. But overall, the Maltese bear is an excellent example of the timeless whodunit. Lenny was smart enough to find what she was looking for, but not smart enough to realize her dog had actually pulled one over on her. Still, she gets an A for effort, and that counts for something. And then there's A Crime to Die For. I don't know if this is really considered the sequel to the previous short, but for purposes of consistency, I might as well say it is. Much like Robot Reboot, this short also feels like a cut-down version of a regular 10-minute episode, and it had the potential to be longer. All it needed to do was to stretch the story out for another 4 minutes. Speaking of the story, the short begins with the family surprised to see their white-colored clothing is now orange, and everyone assumes it was Lincoln's fault because it was his turn to do the laundry. Believing her brother was falsely accused and wanting to overturn his punishment, Lenny sets out to clear Lincoln's name. Going based off that short summary, do you know what this short reminds me of? The episode Sleuth or Consequences. Lincoln gets accused of doing something he knows he didn't do, he teams up with one of his sisters to prove his innocence, and then the mystery is solved when it turns out it was one of his sisters who committed the crime. While Lincoln doesn't technically join Lenny in the investigation since he's confined to a makeshift jail cell tucked away behind some couch cushions, this short is pretty much the same thing as the Sleuth episode. However, this short is significantly better than the aforementioned episode because the writing is more logically structured and it has a way better ending. As in Lincoln not taking the heat for someone else and therefore not validating everyone's original and false accusation against him. Lincoln tells Lenny what he had been doing that day. First, he told Lana a joke that was so funny that milk shot out her nose. Next, he went to the kitchen to eat a large meatball sub. Later, he threw the white laundry into the washer, but just as he was about to start the machine, he left to go to the bathroom, leaving the laundry unattended for quite some time. He then rattles off the names of the only people who were seen around the house while he was there: Lynn, Luann, and Mr. Coconuts. Lenny goes to talk with the 3 people Lincoln mentioned, and they all have an alibi that could easily be confirmed by a witness, i.e. the same 3 people Lenny was investigating. Eventually, Lenny deduces that Lincoln was not the one who turned the laundry orange. It was in fact Lynn, Luann, and Mr. Coconuts. In all honesty, this reveal is not one bit surprising. It was very obvious from the start that those 3 were going to be exposed as the culprits. Just the way Luann was acting when she was pointing the finger at Lincoln was a dead giveaway. However, the true selling point of the mystery is not so much the predictability of finding out who the bad guy was, but it's how the protagonist was able to prove how the bad guys committed the crime and then having the offenders reveal their motivation for doing so. Lenny pieces together how Luann and Lynn were able to sabotage the laundry with yellow and red clothing while Lincoln was in the bathroom with Mr. C serving as a lookout. Considering the puppet can be seen moving on his own, I think it's safe to say even Lenny is fully aware of that thing being alive. The final nail in the coffin was when Lenny realized the coconut aroma from Luann's clothes weren't just from the pie she was baking earlier. Lynn's clothes smelled exactly the same, and that's when Lenny discovered the coconut-scented laundry detergent in the basement. Having been exposed, Lynn, Luann, and Mr. C reveal why they decided to frame Lincoln. Luann was mad at Lincoln for stealing her punchline for the joke she tried to tell earlier, which in turn caused Lana to shoot milk all over her sister and her puppet. Then Lynn got mad at her brother for eating her meatball sub, and that's when she, Luann, and her puppet decide to come up with a plan for revenge. In the end, the 3 culprits apologize for what they did and are rightfully punished for their wrongdoings. They also plan to get their brother a limited edition David Steele comic book as an extra bonus. So not only does Lincoln get his initial punishment overturned and the real offenders are made to pay for their crime, but he also gets a little peace offering as well. That sounds a hell of a lot better than Sleuth or Consequences, and it was all accomplished in a shorter amount of time. So just like the Maltese Bear, A Crime to Die For is another excellent example of how to write a classic whodunit story. Lenny's performance was amazing, the way the plot was written was very logical and concise, and the ending was very satisfying. Even the part at the end where it's revealed Mr. Grouse had been spraying their house with his garden hose to make it look like it was raining was also pretty funny. Normally, I would question what would possess the man to do that, but then I remembered this is the same man who likes to dance to CDs containing classic ice cream truck music and school bus sounds. So maybe there are some things about this man that are not worth questioning at this point. My only critique about the short might seem ridiculous, but it's something my eyes can't ignore. it would be the use of color in a mostly black and white production. The clash of these two filters seemed very distracting. I know it was done to really emphasize the fact that the conflict was about the laundry changing colors, but visually speaking, mixing colors into a mostly black and white production clashes in a way that doesn't look too appealing, at least for me. This could have been presented better if the entire short was drawn in color. At a minimum, it would have kept everything visually consistent. I know that would have ruined the film noir aesthetic the writers were going for, but on the plus side, it would have been intriguing to see what the characters in their 1940s inspired clothing would have looked like in full Technicolor. But either way, there isn't one truly negative thing I can say about either the characters or the writing. They both accomplish the same goal, and they do it very well. So, on the whole, Maltese and Crime are two shorts where I can't say one is definitively better than the other. Some days I may prefer the short from 2020, and on other days I may prefer the one from 2023. I guess it just depends on what kind of mood I'm in at the time. It's still a win-win either way, because with Lenny as the protagonist, you know you're in for a good time. And there you have it, folks. All 21 Loud House shorts reviewed and ranked. I seriously can't believe I spent almost an hour talking about the show. This is the longest amount of time I've ever spent doing that in a single video. A personal record, honestly. If you've made it all the way to the end, let me just say you're awesome, and of course, thank you so much for watching. This was such a huge project, the biggest one to date, and I'm quite satisfied with how it turned out. I hope you all enjoyed the ride just as much as I did. So, as usual, I just gotta ask, what do you guys think of the Loud House shorts? Do you agree with my list? Which ones are your favorites? Which one do you think is the worst of the bunch? What would your top 10 list look like? And better yet, how would you rank all 21 shorts? Sound off in the comments below, and be sure to click that subscribe button for more Loud House related content. That's going to do it for me. I'll catch you guys for the next video, but until then, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainer Ling, signing off. Peace out, home slices.